Okay, so our objectives today are to understand the discipline and the flow of transactions so that you can be properly prepared. We want to talk about how to determine the right fit, get our hands around the warning signs that should be evaluated quickly and effectively. We want to be able to understand how we become aware of anxieties, whether those anxieties can be managed, and what to do about managing them. And by the way, that's a topic in and of itself, the anxieties that go into deal making. It's important to be sure that both sides of the table have a roadmap to keep consensus building and to understand when consensus might be fracturing. And timing is really, really vital. The parties need to know up front whether they're on the same page in terms of the time frame for completing the transaction and the amount of time that would be required to complete the kind of transaction that's being contemplated. So, what goes wrong? Why do deals that on paper seem to be winners become losers? And the long and the short of it is, on paper, you're dealing with numbers. In reality, you're dealing with people. Not to say that numbers aren't going to be important to the process, but many times the reasons that deals that should get done don't get done have everything to do with the personalities and the behavior patterns of real life people. And despite good intentions, people get distracted, people become focused in the wrong fashion, and as a result, the people process will break things down. So let's first start with what would be, the 4 top causes for deals not getting done. And these are not ranked in any type of priority, but the first one is very, very likely to rank very high. And that's all about not having a good match of expectations between the 2 parties who are sitting at the table, so that the successor / buyer may be looking for one result and the seller / firm looking to align may be looking for different results. Those results could be in and around personnel. The results could be in and around expertise. The results could be in and around infrastructure. They could be in and around profitability. They could be in and around culture. The expectations that both parties bring to the table have to align. And the sooner the parties have an understanding of what their synergies are and where they are not in line, the sooner you can make your best effort to figure out whether or not the success factors are going to be there. And in your first conversation, you have to be very, very deliberate and highly disciplined about not digging into the data. Don't go to what's your profit. Don't go to what kind of compensation system are you using. Those are important questions. But at the end of the day, if we don't have similar expectations for the result of the transaction, those issues will never become relevant. So the first gatepost is to go through the expectations. Certainly understand people as people, but really have a complete airing of those expectations. So to the extent that they don't match, or as you get through the conversations, you begin to see things that are not lining up, that is going to be the sign of fracture, the sign of a deal not on the right pathway. That doesn't mean you can't get them on the right pathway, but by ignoring them, you're going to create this waste of time, and a deal that probably could have gotten done won't get done because you didn't address these expectations and the lack of synergy around them early enough. There are always going to be outside factors that interfere, and we need to dig into what the noise and disruptors are. We will talk about what is now the loudest disruptor by virtue of what the media has provided in the way of attention, which is PE, private equity. And I think you have a class this week that's going to talk about private equity transactions. It is an amazing disruptor on both sides of the table, and I'm going to talk about that. Inappropriate behavior, people not getting back in time, people not responding with clarity, people not asking the right kind of questions, or people going out of the box in terms of what they're attempting to learn. The more you go out of your box, the more likely you are to bring the deal to a difficult place. And this is a very personal component. People have their own comfort zones. That's not to say that you shouldn't be provocative, but there are guardrails. And if people don't look at the guardrails and respect the guardrails, the deals will collapse. And finally, there are warning signs that you ignore as you go along, either because you're distracted in your own practice on a daily basis, you're distracted by other business issues, or you're distracted by other deal terms, and they cloud your ability to see the full picture. So these are primarily the 4 reasons why deals that should get done don't get done. Now, just by way of some background, in the most recent Rosenberg survey, they surveyed firms of different sizes, as they always do. And what we're seeing here is that the percentage of partners over age 60 would be greatest based on this survey in the $2 to $5 million range of annual volume. Well, that correlates to a good part of our audience today, so that this group of firms would typically have a high interest in getting a transaction done because they have partners who are looking for some type of exit or retirement. There are 46,000 public accounting firms in the United States. So most of them are very small firms. And within a recent survey, just again, to get your arms around the demographics, not to depress you and not to do anything other than make you aware of what the competitive landscape is, when Inside Public Accounting did its recent survey on succession planning, they came back and said that more than 30% of all firms have a managing partner who's over 60 years old, and 12% have them over 65. So the reason that this is important is, in many of those firms, nobody wants to take the job. And so therefore, you have firms clamoring to find a program to align themselves with another firm. There's a lot of competition to get in front of another firm because the management is tired and nobody wants to take that management on. And as a result, things have to change. But a word of caution, Alan Colton, who I'm sure everybody has heard of, has been quoted as saying firms under 5 million don't have as many people interested in them as they used to. So, again, compounding the reality of where we're at. And again, the need to combine so that you can attract more talent and that you can get better clients is very real. So you would want your chances for the deal to succeed to be very high. And that's the takeaway from looking at that industry survey, and certainly paying great respect to Alan, who is very focused in this area. So where do the mismatched expectations come from? Well, one
I'm
is
sorry,
in the person. I'm sorry.
Ira, would you like to do a poll right before this slide?
Sure.
Okay, let's take the poll real quick. Top reasons M&A deals do not happen include mismatched expectations, noise disruptors, inappropriate behavior, parties ignoring warning signs, and all of the above. And we're still getting answers in. So mismatched expectations, noise and disruptors, inappropriate behavior, parties ignore warning signs, all of the above. And we did get 100% on here. So let's look at our answer. We had 8% said noise and disruptors, and 92% said all of the above. Thank you
All
all.
right, we got a great class here. A bunch of geniuses are here. Terrific. So let's quickly talk about mismatched expectations. Unfortunately, the smaller firms expect that the firms that they're talking with, who could be their exit strategy, have personnel that has nothing to do. And they expect that as soon as this marriage takes place, the personnel problem is going to disappear. Nothing could be further from the truth. There is no firm that has unlimited personnel and has unlimited personnel of the capacity that you're looking for. But the larger firms have access to a different mix of personnel, and they're able to free some of the personnel that you have up so that they can perform at their highest and best use. But if you go into this thinking that there's going to be no change, and you've met the savior who's got the people who are going to make this happen, that's a mismatched expectation, and it's not going to work. Now, the other side of this, which is very relevant, and it's a huge motivation to sit at the table, is to get more human capital, is that the larger firms have made enormous progress by offshoring and outsourcing work. So that work that would get done here is being done elsewhere, and that is taking the pressure off on the personnel side, but there is no unlimited supply. So that's one area of a mismatched expectation. And if either firm can't get over it, we're not going to be able to get a deal done. Client fee compatibility. If the fees aren't close enough and the rates can't be allowed to morph over time, there's not going to be a transaction. Nobody does a deal to lose clients, and nobody does a deal not to make money, and nobody does a deal to lose clients that are deemed to be their best clients. Now, do you both have similar criteria for determining what would be an A client? That's an important conversation to have early out. Even if your fees are not compatible, knowing that you understand your clients in the same fashion is very meaningful. And I have many situations where, due to geography, a firm in Pittsburgh can't get the same rates that a firm in New York is going to get. And so they have to be able to find a happy ground. And if you're being told, no, you've got to charge the New York rates, even though you're in Madison, Wisconsin, or you're in Metuchen, New Jersey, that's not going to work. So you've got to be able to look at that and be sure you have a good expectation on how you're going to manage that process. If the parties can't come to a comfortable place on how people's careers are going to advance, that's going to be a deal killer. This profession needs more people to stay in the profession. And so when you do the transaction, you've got to air out what it's going to take to lengthen the career path of the people. And if you can't get comfortable that that's going to happen, you got to be able to part company. you have to have a similar view on growth. If the next firm thinks you should grow at 15% and you've only been growing at 3 or 4%, well, they've got to show you a plan as to how they're going to help you